if I had that, how do I know that's an equation?
Because it has an equal sign.
Because it has an equal sign. So far, all the problems we've done in this chapter have had no equal signs. Now we're getting into where the equals come into play. So in order to solve this, what would you do?
Subtract the 3.
Both sides.
Subtract 3 on both sides. So you would get x equals 6. And you would get one answer, and you were all happy and done. Okay. One thing you probably didn't know, do you know what, well, I know you know this part, what is the exponent on that x?
1.
1. That means you have one solution to the problem. If you have x squareds, how many answers do you think you're going to have?
2.
2 answers. That's what we're getting into, but you have to know how to factor to be able to solve them. So let me give you some guideline steps to follow.
And this is 5A.
Yep. We had x to the third, x to the fourth, which you'll see later on in another class, you get 3 and 4. This depends on how many parts you have. Section 5.8. Solving, I'm going to use a big word here, quadratic equations. Well, you guys have been dealing with them all week. Solving quadratic equations. Quadratic just means x squared. That's all it means. It just means you have an x squared in your problem.
Today's the 25th, right?
Ah, yes. When you had something like this back in chapter 3, we call this a linear equation. Linear just means you have x to the first. Quadratic means you have x to the second. So that's all the fancy word means. And let me give you some steps in solving these. Got to know how to factor, that's the big step. Step 1, make sure all terms are on the same side as the equals. It means it has of equals. And 0 is on the other side. Make sure all your terms, they all have to be on one side. They can all be on the left side or the right side of the equals, but they all have to be together. Step 2, take out a GCF, if there is one. Sometimes there isn't. Factor. And step 4, take each set of parentheses and set equal to 0 and solve the equation like you would do in chapter 3. So if chapter 3 is not a fun chapter for you, you've got to look back at it, or you're never going to be able to solve it.
Does that mean, when you say in chapter 3, does that mean just like solve it like it was a linear?
Yeah, like that. And you can make a little note now. Can have fraction answers.
Icky fractions.
Yes.
That's exactly how I feel.
But you don't have to do anything with them, so it's okay.
She wrote that icky fraction. I
Can
can't
have
believe I'm
fractions.
reading through that. You got icky fractions. You
Icky
don't have icky fractions.
You already know, hopefully, you've worked on it, know how to do steps 2 and 3. Step 1, that's the easiest step. Step 2 and 3, you should already know how to do. And when I show you to do step 4, you should already know how to solve equations. So it's kind of stuff you've already done. I'm just kind of putting all this stuff together. So to show you an example, let me give you your first problem. X squared plus 3x minus 18 equals 0. Now before, you wanted to move the x's to one side, your numbers to the other. You don't do that with x squared. When it's an x squared, everything needs to be on the same side. Are our 3 terms all on the left side?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's set equal to 0. So step 1's done. We don't even have to do it.
And the 2 lets us know there's going to be 2 answers, right?
Correct. Yeah, this little 2 tells you there are going to be 2 answers. They could be the same answer. It could be 1 and 1, but there are 2 answers to it. Let's see. Step 2, take out a GCF. Do I have a common number? No. So step 3 says factor. What type of factoring is this?
Simple.
Simple. So I can go ahead and make my 2 sets of parentheses. Keep it equal to 0. Don't let that disappear. Have x and x. And what numbers multiply to 18 but could give you 3?
6.
6 and 3, or 3 and 6. Do we have to add or subtract those numbers? Subtract. So the bigger number needs this plus sign. What's my bigger number?
6.
The 6. So this part should just be, yeah, okay, that's from 5.3. That's just reviewing simple. That's all we've done is just factoring. The only real new step is step 4. Once you have factored, you're going to take each piece, so x plus 6, set it equal to 0. Then you're going to take your second piece, x minus 3, set it equal to 0. So now you have 2 puzzles that you got to solve. You got 2 pieces of this equation you need to solve. How would you get the x by itself in that first equation? Subtract 6. So x equals, what's 0 minus 6? Negative 6. There's one answer. I've got x all by itself. With the second one, how would I get that x by itself?
Positive 3.
Positive 3. Positive 3. So x, this cancels, equals 0 plus 3 is 3. And you've got your 2 answers. And if you plug them back in wherever you see an x, and you do all the arithmetic, it's going to equal 0. So they do check. You can check these. Okay, but that's the only new part. Just taking the 2 pieces and creating their own little equations. And you're always going to set it equal to 0 every single time.
So these are we can make any oddies or simples?
Or difference of squares. You shouldn't have any group.